The Holy Kabbalah as I Know It. Chapter 14a and b. The place of astrology and tarot in Holy Kabbalah. This is what the AI says about astrology. Quote, astrology is the belief system that studies how the positions and movements of celestial bodies, like the sun, moon, planets, and stars, are connected to human personality, behavior, and life events. In simple terms, it suggests that where the planets were at the time of your birth can influence who you are and what patterns show up in your life. This information is organized into things like zodiac signs, birth charts, natal charts, houses, and planetary aspects. For example, your zodiac sign, like Aries or Virgo, is based on where the sun was when you were born. A birth chart is basically a snapshot of the sky at your birth, used to interpret traits, strengths, challenges, and timing. Astrology isn't considered a science. It's more of a cultural, symbolic, and spiritual tradition that's been around for thousands of years and is often used for self-reflection, guidance, or fun. Unquote. As can be seen from the preceding quotation, astrology cannot be said to be pure science but is speculative and based essentially on coincidences in nature. Astrology has been used by many prominent persons in history with a measure of success, but that does not mean we should accept it. In fact, it is doubtful if the Jews included astrology in their initial works on the Kabbalah, just as the tarot that is often given mention by some Kabbalists was actually the work of the Bohemians and therefore cannot be said to be pure Kabbalah. We are discussing it here because we want to address the misconceptions brought in by even well-informed Kabbalists that it is indeed a part of the Kabbalah. Astronomy, which is the scientific aspect of astrology, has often distanced itself from astrology inasmuch as it does not often regard the speculative aspect of astrology as science, which is based on research and close observation. From recent researches published about the history of the universe, it is true that there is an abundance of proof that there are some similarities between what has been found on the wreckages of some stars on Earth which are similar to what is in human bodies, but that is not enough to rush into any conclusion that the stars have influenced the biology of the human system. More research is needed to confirm or refute such occurrences. From the foregoing, we can say that astrology, which has been a belief system in our world for centuries, cannot pass the test to be science. It has been observed that even astrologers who have been able to predict some events in history have not been able to predict the events that affected their personal lives. Perhaps any accuracy in astrology is based on the functions of the human mind and is likely described as a belief system, often given the name faith by the religions. So, the most correct way to describe astrology is that it is a function of the mind which sometimes create that which have been held long enough to enable it generate images or substances similar to what our Creator did in His creation of the universe. For example, one of the religions described faith as, quote, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen, unquote. From the following description, it is easy to conclude that astrology has to do with the mind and mental processes than influences talked about of the planetary system. In fact, prominent astrologers tell us in clear terms that the stars do not compel but merely impel, which means a strong mind can refuse to accept what the star suggests. By the same token, the same strong mind can accept what the stars say and make things happen as the star suggests. That is why William Shakespeare said, quote, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. Unquote. William Shakespeare can be said to be a sage of high repute, being one of the most inspired writers of the past. So to ignore what he says is to do ourselves lots of harm, as many have done in the past because of their compulsive belief in the influence of stars. In the past, we have written profusely about faith and superstition, concluding that the mental processes involved in faith are similar to those that lead to superstition. In fact, they produce the same result on the human mind. The only difference is that while faith is upheld as something good, superstition is seen as something derogatory in nature. These are some of the mysteries of nature students of Kabbalah must study to distinguish between what is practical and what is merely a speculation. Your facilitator has studied all these things for not less than 60 years and will like to stimulate the thinking processes in every aspiring Kabbalist towards what can be described as good in a world that is essentially full of ignorance. Have current scientists not told us that our ignorance of the nature of our universe is at least 99%, meaning that our knowledge of the universe is only less than 1%, which goes to prove that the more our knowledge, the more we discover the high level of our ignorance, prompting us to go on with our effort to acquire more knowledge so as to reduce the level of difference between us and our Creator who wants us to imitate Him. Note: your facilitator is interested in interacting with all viewers because of his belief that this is the best way to fast-track the process of acquiring new knowledge so as to make the world a better place for humanity today. So merely viewing and nodding or shaking your head in response is not the best way to illumination. Let us therefore do the best we can to work together for an end that will definitely clear the way for a more peaceful, prosperous, and harmonious world, which should be the mantra of all men and women of goodwill.